Well, hello and welcome to Theology Matters Thursday, where we are tackling some of the most frequently asked Bible and theology questions. Today's question is, what is the deal with all those different Bible translations out there? You know, if you've been around Alpine, you know that one of our foundational principles is that the Bible is our guide. We strongly believe that the only trustworthy source of spiritual truth is God's Word, the Bible. And so it can be confusing with that being true, that there are all these different translations and versions of the Bible out there. There's the King James Bible, maybe you grew up with that, with all the these and the thous in it. And then you see us preach on Sundays at Alpine, and we often use the New International Version or the New American Standard or one of these other different, more modern translations of the Bible. And so the question can naturally arise, well, is one of them better than the others? Is there one that I should be reading? You know, is one a better source of truth? And really, if you look at all these different variations and versions of the Bible, is there a lot of variation in meaning between all these biblical texts? Well, let me try to explain this as simply and basically as possible. The first thing you need to understand about the Bible is that it wasn't written in English. The Old Testament was written in the Hebrew language, and the New Testament was written in the Greek language. And so unless you can read Hebrew or Greek, you need a translation of the Bible into English. Well, unfortunately, we don't have any of the original copies that, you know, the Apostle Paul wrote with his own hand or Moses wrote with his own hand. But what we do have are these ancient copies that we call manuscripts. And all a manuscript is an ancient copy of the biblical text. Now, when it comes to the Old Testament, these Hebrew manuscripts, we base our translations off what are called the Masoretic manuscripts. It's a group of manuscripts that all date to between 200 BC and 100 AD. And then when it comes to the New Testament, the Greek manuscripts, we base our translations off one of two groups of manuscripts. There's kind of two options. One is the Byzantine group of manuscripts, and those date to between the 9th and the 12th century AD. And then you have the Alexandrian group of manuscripts, which date to the 2nd through the 4th century AD. So what we have are all these ancient manuscripts written in the Hebrew language and the Greek language, and these are the foundation for the text of the Bible. And so the question is, well, how do we get our modern translations into English from these ancient texts in other languages? Well, basically, here's how it kind of breaks down. Pretty much all translations of the Old Testament, no matter what English translation of the Bible you pick up today, they're all going to come from the same family of Masoretic texts that date between 200 BC and about 100 AD. Now, the translation difference comes in the New Testament. You have the King James translation, again, that many of you grew up with, and those are based on the Byzantine manuscripts. Again, those date between the 9th and the 12th century AD. And then all the other modern translations, like the NIV, the New International Version, or the New Living Translation, those base their New Testament translation off the Alexandrian manuscripts. Remember, the Alexandrian texts date back between the 2nd and 4th century AD. So what Bible translators are doing is translating ancient Hebrew and Greek into modern English based off of either the Byzantine manuscripts or the Alexandrian manuscripts. Now, most scholars today agree that the Alexandrian texts are a little bit better simply because they are older, and because they're older, they're closer to the originals, and so the view is that they're closer to when the Apostle Paul wrote it, for example, so the older they are, the better they are. But really, here's the good news, is they're really all good. If you look at all the various translations and all the different ancient texts that are used, there is over 95% agreement across all the different texts, and none of those slight variations affect the meaning of the text whatsoever. It's all just really minor stuff. And so the good news is, what I encourage people to do is simply pick a translation of the Bible that works for you, one that you can understand well, and one that works well in how you study the Bible. And if you don't really know the differences, I'd encourage you to go to a website like BibleGateway.com, where you can look at all the translations side by side there. But really, the most important thing is to dig into God's Word. And as you pray this week, take a minute just to thank God for revealing Himself in the Bible. What an incredible gift that is. And so pursue Him in His Word.